Millions of Kenyans went to the polls and in some cases waited 5 hours in line to vote on a new constitution. The referendum is the latest stage of the plan to tackle the causes of the violence that followed the 2007 presidential election, which saw more than 1,000 killed. The current constitution enshrines presidential power, and attempts to reform it in the past have failed. The draft constitution would create a second chamber of parliament, a senate, to keep the president's powers in check. It will also establish a land commission, and any land illegally held could then be repossessed. Another provision would keep Qadi courts, which the Muslim minority in Kenya use to govern family issues and marital matters. Some Christian churches brand the courts discriminatory. There's also a controversial clause that would allow women to get abortions if their life or health is at risk. That's opposed by some politicians and religious leaders. Al Jazeera's Andrew Simmons now reports.
Under heavy guard, the votes that could be a new beginning for Kenyan politics, scarred by past violence and flawed results. The country's leadership had set out to prove it could bring free and fair polling to Kenyans. So far, it would seem so good. Yes. As the counting went through to Thursday morning, the tallying showed a strong early lead for the Yes campaign. Yes. Kenyans had voted in high numbers and peacefully. The referendum is intended to usher in a new era of good governance, better human rights, a president without the absolute powers of the past, and more say for the people. President Kibaki, serving his last term in office, has led the Yes campaign.
The election has gone well, but today is the day we will know the end result. At this moment, we want everyone to be calm and not be people who are violent. There is no conflict. Let's continue properly so that we finish developing our country.
The president's one-time arch-rival, Raila Odinga, voting yes here with his wife, was confident of victory.
I have no doubt in my mind that the yes is going to win resoundingly. I want to predict over 70% victory.
But this referendum follows heated campaigning with passionate resistance to some aspects of the constitutional draft. Kenya is divided again, but this time not along party political lines. It isn't as simple as yes or no to a new constitution. Kenyans have wanted one for more than 20 years. It's about whether this draft is best for the country. The biggest objection to this constitution is the way a commission is intended to reform land ownership. Here in the Rift Valley, where some of the worst ethnic clashes following the 2007 elections took place, it's even more relevant than elsewhere. The leader of the No campaign, himself a rebel minister of state, believes plans to repossess illegally held land and cap the amount individuals can own will lead to more ethnic clashes.
I think let's talk about when it wins. I think that's more like it. Of course, when we take that decision finally, it will give us that much needed opportunity to correct the mistakes in these fundamental flaws in this draft constitution and be able to pass a constitution that will create harmony and unity in our country.
85, 86.
Now Kenyans are braced for what's always been the most hazardous part of their polling, the result. It should be known later on Thursday. If it's a big yes majority, it's expected there will be less chance of any strong resistance from no supporters. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera, Nairobi.
The clauses in the new constitution that dealt with abortion have caught the attention of some politicians and Christian groups here in the United States. The American Center for Law and Justice is one of the groups that supplied money and expertise to the No campaign in Kenya. And earlier, the firm's deputy director told me why it had intervened in another country's constitutional debate.
Our organization was just very clear that this language, which you had every single major politician in Kenya who was backing this constitution trying to come out and say this really isn't abortion on demand, it is. We're attorneys, we do international law.
Abortion is not permitted unless the life or health of the mother is in danger.
And the health is the key word. International courts, including in the United States Supreme Court, all over the world have held that a health exception means I don't feel like having a baby today, I can have an abortion. It's that clear. It's that easy. It doesn't even take a doctor determining a health issue.
Now that's interesting, because in some ways someone would say this has gone too far already, that because the efforts of anti-abortion activists got abortion put into the Constitution in the first place. Every person has the right to life. The life of a person begins at conception, and so forth. As you mentioned, the Supreme Court is usually the venue for those sort of discussions in the U.S. This stuff shouldn't be in here in the first place, should it?
That's actually part of some of our argument, is that the right to life that begins at conception, that's a very overarching kind of statement to make in a Constitution. But if you're going to go that far and then to have the provision right after it that says, but we're also going to allow abortion for a health exception, it's already got a provision in the Constitution that's conflicting. But at the same time, the Kenyan community, which is very pro-life, there are obviously a ton of issues in stake here on the proposed Constitution.
And you're ready to jettison all those for this particular issue, which actually, as it's stated in the Constitution, as it's written, is basically just a restatement of the law that's currently in place in Kenya.
It's not a restatement. The health exception is brand new, and the health exception is the abortion on demand. And we believe, as an organization, our team in Kenya at the East Africa Center for Law and Justice, that if you really do believe that abortion is murder, that is grounds to opposing a Constitution.
So it's only the health issue, then? I mean, you don't object to an abortion if the life of the mother is in danger?
No, and there haven't been. We're not an organization here in the United States or abroad that's ever been opposed to that kind of language where there's truly a life in danger situation. We think that's a decision that should be made.
Some of the Catholic
we understand
in Kenya are saying that even that's too far.
But for us as an organization, what we say is that that's a decision that should be made by the family if the woman's life is really in danger. At the same time, though, what we already understand is that the Kenyans had to vote on a lot of different issues, but people should have been educated about this, and I think the government leaders there all coming out and saying this was an abortion on demand just aren't telling the truth on this, and we'll see this as it plays out in the courts.
You don't think you're being used at all by people who are just simply against political reform? I mean, even if this amendment or this referendum, this new constitution referendum had failed, I mean, the old constitution didn't have any express provision against abortion. It certainly allowed for Islamic courts and so forth. And in fact, actually, Reuters cited a survey that suggested because the church has taken such a position on this issue for whatever reason, I think the figure is about 45% of both Catholics and Protestants now question the authority of the church. This has backfired immensely. You don't think you're just being used by other powers?
No, I don't think so. We have offices around the world. This is nothing new for us to be involved in really controversial issues. In fact, I think a document like this, a proposed constitution, should be outside of partisan politics. And our organization was founded in Kenya. Actually, the initial steps was to get a constitution through with those government reforms, just not this issue on abortion, the Qadi's courts. We were not against the reforms there, the separation. We all knew, everyone knows, including our staff there, that needed to be done. But at the end of the day, if people believe abortion is murder, if people believe that everyone should be under the same laws and not different court systems, I think that's something that Kenyans need to be educated about, and that's what we were able to do.